So I got a column I wrote, filed every Sunday at noon, called Top of Mind, about Biden wandering around on stage asking for Jackie, and Congresswoman Walorski, of course, is dead. I hope you read the column on BillO'Reilly.com, but it goes back to the president's mental acuity. So I asked my staff, look, get me somebody who can explain not only Mr. Biden's circumstance, but the other 6 million people in America have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and dementia. I mean, this is a huge problem. So we went to Dr. Carol Lieberman, who we've had on before. She is the host of Dr. Carol's Couch on voiceamerica.com. And she does a podcast, the Terrorist Therapist podcast. So she's around. She knows what's going on. Let's deal with the Jackie Walorski situation first. When you saw that, what went through your mind?
Well, it's just another typical sign of dementia that Biden is exhibiting. I have been talking about what I call Biden's encroaching dementia since he was in the basement and running for president. I mean, the signs were already there, but people were saying, oh, those are just gaffes. That's nothing. And we have all seen, you don't have to be a psychiatrist to realize this now. I mean, I do this kind of work as a forensic psychiatrist in cases where you have to determine if someone is competent, such as to sign a will or things like that. And I offer to give Biden that kind of test. But so these symptoms, he's showing memory problems. So she was dead, and he stumbles around not only memory, but when you have memory problems and you try to come up with stories to explain it so people don't realize that you don't remember or you don't know what you're talking about, you make up a story. He has that. He has emotional liability, explosions, calling people, saying really inappropriate kinds of things. But the worst symptom of dementia that he has, worst in terms of getting our country into trouble, is abstract thinking. There is in dementia a decrease in abstract thinking. That is where you can't hold at the same time in your mind hard concepts, complicated concepts. It's the kind of thing where chess players are really good. They have good abstract thinking. They can think at the same time, at the same moment. They can figure out, if I use that strategy, the other person's going to do that, and then I'll do this, and down the line. Or if I use that strategy, he can't hold all these different choices in his mind at the same time. And the clearest way that we saw that was with Afghanistan, when the Taliban didn't cooperate with his plan A, what he thought was going to happen or wanted to have happen. He was lost. He didn't have a plan B or C, and he was just lost. And we know what a disaster that was.
That might be the responsibility of some of his advisors. But let me get back to Jackie Walorski. Isn't it possible, being the president of the United States and having to deal with all kinds of stuff every day, that he simply forgot about this horrendous auto accident that took her life, that he just forgot about it, and people forget things, right?
Well, if that was an isolated case, then yes, you could excuse him for that. You could excuse anyone. He did something even worse a few months ago. He didn't remember the name of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. He called him that guy who does something over there. I mean, this is a constant, everyday kind of situation where he's forgetting
from
things.
Your perch as a psychiatrist, you see a man in decline. Now, my mother went through dementia, so I know firsthand, because I would visit her all the time. I kept her in her own house. I didn't want her, I had 24/7 care on her. So there were days when she was clearer. She were days when, we could have a conversation about what happened when I was a little boy and this and that, and she could do it. But other days where she couldn't do anything. Is that how it usually goes?
Well, dementia, Alzheimer's, there are many different types of dementia, and it really varies a lot with each person. So Alzheimer's is the most common. There's also vascular dementia, there's Lewy body dementia, and they share a lot of the same symptoms. Now with Biden, even though Alzheimer's is the most common, the most likely for him, I think, and of course I haven't examined him, physically, but the reason why I'm saying it's most likely that he has vascular dementia, these proteins from decaying brain cells form in the brain. And that is what gets in the way of the connections, of thinking clearly.
Okay, but as people get older, they lose some mental acuity. Everybody, correct?
Well, but it's so variable. There are people who are 101 who are sharp as tacks.
No, I know
And then
that.
there,
But there are certain things that decline physically and mentally as you get older. So
yes,
I'm not disputing your analysis of Biden. And the reason I'm doing this segment is that he's reached a point, in my opinion, where he's harming the country so much. But where are his advisors? Where is his wife? I knew when my mother was going downhill. I knew, and I took steps to, make sure that she wasn't going to hurt herself or anybody else. Doesn't seem like
yes.
anybody in there is doing anything.
Well, that's because the people who are pulling the strings behind Biden are, just putting him out there, trying to fool the public for as long as possible so that they can do what they want, like the progressive things that you were just talking about behind the scenes, and just have him out there, as the face. And it is so dangerous. I mean, just as an example, we know Putin is saber rattling with nuclear weapons and so on. And Biden, remember months ago when he said, for God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power, and that is Putin's greatest fear. He's paranoid and he thinks that we want to take away his power from him and so on. And so Biden just says a comment like that offhand. And because he doesn't have abstract thinking, he can't hold different strategies for how to deal with.
He doesn't know what the unintended consequences are of his actions. I think that's the most important thing, that he does what he's told to do. He doesn't understand what it could lead to, like the American fuel industry. You can't absolutely attack it and think that's going to not lead to inflation. Final question, though, Jill Biden. Jill Biden looks to me to be a woman who's in control of herself. She's got to know this, right? Doesn't she have to know this?
Of course. It is, she just wants to be the first lady more than she cares about the country, and more than she cares about her husband making a fool of herself, and more than she cares about trying to stop the progression of his dementia. There aren't so far drugs that can cure these different kinds of dementias, but there are drugs that can slow the progression. And why she doesn't have her husband, into seeing the best neurologist she can find to try to find some medication to slow down this progression.
That would be the end, though. If that ever got out, that would be the end.
Well, yes, of course, yes.
He'd have to resign. All right, doctor, we appreciate it. We hope you'll come back as the events unfold. Unfortunately, I think your assessment is pretty much right on.